for what I think you will find a very, very informative and interesting program. At a time when our nation is seeing an obscene level of income and wealth inequality, and when I think, as all of you know, the people on top are doing phenomenally well, while at the same time working people are struggling, we are going in the next few weeks and months to be focusing on the needs and struggles of working people. And we are going to take a hard look at the increased level of unionization activities that we're now seeing all across this country in an unprecedented way. Workers, coast to coast, are beginning to stand up, fight back, and demand to be represented by a union. And tonight, something which is really, really exciting, we are going to be speaking to workers in Buffalo, New York, who are attempting to unionize 3 Starbucks shops in the Buffalo area. Now, you might say, why is an effort to organize 3 shops a big deal? And the answer is that Starbucks has some 15,000 locations, some of them corporately owned, some of them franchise owned, but 15,000 in the United States, and none of them, 0, are unionized, not one. So if these Starbucks workers succeed in their organizing effort, it will be a major breakthrough, not only for Starbucks employees, but for all workers in the low-wage service industry as a whole. This is an industry where people are paid some of the lowest wages in America, worst working conditions. If there could be a breakthrough here at Starbucks, it is a very big deal. And I should add here, and you'll hear a whole lot more about it tonight from our guests, that Starbucks management, to say the least, has been less than enthusiastic about this union organizing effort in Buffalo. In fact, they are doing everything, really in some incredible ways, everything they possibly can to defeat this union organizing drive. Now, let me say a word about the Starbucks Corporation. And the key point to be made here is that Starbucks is not a poor company. This is not some company that is struggling, trying to put a few dimes together. Quite the contrary. This year, Starbucks has already made over $4.1 billion in profits, 4.1 billion in profits. Last year, Starbucks had enough money to pay its CEO, Kevin Johnson, $14.7 million in total compensation. That's over 1,200 times what they pay their average employee. And I think this is also an interesting point to be made, that during the pandemic, the founder of Starbucks and the major stockholder in Starbucks, Howard Schultz, became $1.9 billion richer. That is just during the pandemic, and now has a net worth of almost $5 billion. In other words, Starbucks is a company that has the resources to provide its workers with good wages, with good working conditions, and good benefits. And now let me just divert for another moment and raise another issue that I find very, very interesting. And that is that many, not all to be sure, but many of Starbucks employees are younger people who come from a generation that has really struggled economically. And if you are a member of that younger generation, you know what I'm talking about. In America today, our younger generation, through no fault of their own, now has a lower standard of living than their parents. In other words, the American dream is going backwards. Our younger people are poorer than their parents were at the same age. Our younger generation received lower real inflation accounted for wages. They have higher debt, most often student debt, and the amount of money they spend on housing is very, very high. So you add all of that stuff together, not a lot of money coming in and a lot of money going out. They are struggling in a very significant way. In America today, the average worker is making $40 a week less than he or she did 48 years ago after adjusting for inflation. According to the most recent data, millennials earn about 20% less today than baby boomers did at the same stage in their life, despite this generation being better educated. The bottom 60% of college graduates earn less money today than those who graduated college did 20 years ago. The wealth of the average millennial today is 40% less than those who were at a similar age in 1989. Meanwhile, the cost of housing in real inflation accounted for dollars is 72% higher than it was 20 years ago. Cost of college education is 163% higher than it was 20 years ago. The cost of childcare and preschool is 100% higher than it was 20 years ago. So you got a lot of pressure on this younger generation. And of course, the pandemic that we continue to go through, struggle through, has made a bad situation worse for all of us, but maybe even more so, the younger generation. And during the height of the pandemic, 54% of young Americans either lost a job or had to take a pay cut more than any other age group. 52% of young Americans were forced to move back home with their parents. They couldn't afford their own housing. 35% of young Americans experienced problems finding enough money to pay the rent, medical care, or other bills. So this is where we are right now. We have a company that is doing phenomenally well. We have workers who are struggling to put food on the table to pay off their student debt. And in Buffalo, New York, workers there are standing up and demanding a union. And tonight we're going to hear from some of these workers, and we are going to find out what motivates them and what they want. So let us begin with Michelle Eisen. And Michelle has been a Starbucks, what they call partner. I would call it an employee, but within Starbucks lingo, it is a partner for the last 11 years, and is also a production stage manager. Michelle works at the Elmwood location and is a leader of the Starbucks Workers United Organizing Committee. Michelle, thank you very much for being with us.